Breaking tonight, history for all the wrong reasons. The presumptive Democratic nominee for president grilled by the FBI. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. And now my opening statement. For the first time in the history of this great nation, the person about to become the Democratic nominee for President of the United States was interrogated by the FBI today as part of an ongoing year-long federal criminal investigation. This within days of the target's husband, Bill Clinton, meeting privately on board a parked private jet with the Attorney General of the United States, who has his wife's future in her hands, deciding whether that wife should be indicted for engaging in criminal activity. That Loretta Lynch, the chief law enforcement officer of this country, the head of the United States Department of Justice, that citadel of integrity and impartiality, would violate her own Justice Department rules on ethical conduct, specifically Rule 14, would not only talk for 30 minutes in a private, unmemorialized meeting, but for a local reporter, and then not recuse herself from the criminal investigation, brings shame on all the great United States attorneys who work tirelessly, ethically, doing their jobs without fear or favor. You know, every small-town prosecutor in this country would not only refuse to speak with the spouse of a target, but would refuse to even be in their company to avoid the appearance of impropriety. And then Loretta Lynch tries to sell us a bill of goods and then tries to back out of her unethical conduct by saying this.
The recommendations will be reviewed by career supervisors in the Department of Justice and in the FBI, and by the FBI director. And then, as is the common process, they present it to me, and I fully expect to accept their recommendations.
Did you notice she said she expects to accept? Does accepting their recommendations mean she doesn't have the right to overrule it? No. She didn't say, I will recuse myself. She didn't say, I'll stay out of it. She didn't say, I'll ask for a special prosecutor, or I'll ask for an independent counsel. This is all smoke and mirrors, folks. So what's going on in this country? We have a president who lies about everything, from a peaceful protest that got out of hand in Benghazi to you can keep your health care and your doctor. A Secretary of State who lies about everything, from that despicable video causing the deaths of an ambassador and 3 Americans to having her own server for convenience. Folks, these are people for whom there are no consequences, and yet they keep going higher and higher in our government. These are people openly flaunting the system while we ordinary Americans are held to a completely different standard. Now, I've spent over 3 decades in the criminal justice system as a prosecutor, an elected judge, and an elected district attorney. I have investigated, arrested, indicted, prosecuted, and sentenced criminals for murders, rapes, and violent felonies, and every one of them is entitled to the presumption of innocence. But is everyone entitled to the presumption of truthfulness? Are these people entitled to a presumption of truthfulness? The answer is absolutely not. There is no way Bill Clinton is entitled to a presumption of truthfulness. His talking to the Attorney General when he himself might be a target, or at least a witness, in the worldwide money laundering operation called the Clinton Foundation, parading as a not-for-profit charity, would be bad enough if we had reason to believe they were saying the truth. But with Bill Clinton, there can be no presumption of truthfulness. There is serial evidence to the contrary. Bill Clinton was impeached for perjury and obstruction of justice. He escaped indictment by accepting a penalty short of criminal conviction, including an unequivocal admission of lying under oath by surrendering his law license. As a result, he was disbarred. Hillary Clinton has been investigated for everything from the Rose Law Firm to Whitewater to cattle futures to missing files, Travelgate, etc. So what should Americans reasonably believe? Nothing that they say. The Clintons repeatedly violate our standard of truthfulness and honesty. So should these people be trusted to run our country? Should Hillary Clinton be trusted to run for president of the United States? Should the Clintons be trusted to go back into the White House? The answer is positively, absolutely, undeniably, unquestionably no. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter. Hashtag Judge Jeanine. Joining me now to talk about today's developments in Washington, the president of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton. Tom, thanks for being with me tonight. What's your take on what happened today?
Well, it's an extraordinary development. The FBI doesn't call you in for 3.5 hours to dot the I's and cross the T's, especially someone like Mrs. Clinton, who is such a public figure. I think a meeting like this, if it was typical, would be at the end of an investigation, and they're bringing the target of the investigation in and asking her essentially to tell them why she shouldn't be indicted. A 3.5-hour meeting is a lengthy meeting. I've sat in plenty of depositions where 3+ hours of questions is more than enough to get the information out, and it can provide an exhaustive vehicle for getting what is supposed to be the truth. And I tell you, the fact that this FBI here questioning and answer session took place today makes that meeting that Bill Hill and Ms. Lynch had even worse. Had that meeting been scheduled prior to today? Did they know about the meeting when they met on Monday of last week? Had it been scheduled already? And if it had been scheduled already, it's even worse.
Tom, you know what? I agree with you. And obviously you heard my open, you know how I think. Here's the thing. If she is the last person to be interviewed, and they know this is going to be wrapped up before the convention, one way or the other, then there's no question that they knew that she's the last witness. As in all criminal investigations, the last person the FBI speaks to is the person who is the center of the investigation or the target. So, I mean, Bill Clinton the man is a perjurer. He perjures under oath. I mean, the man was impeached for perjury. And it's not just for one thing. It's repeatedly in depositions. It's in grand juries. I mean, this is someone who is not honest. Someone who was the attorney general who knew that it was unethical. And shame on Loretta Lynch for not throwing him off that plane. And it just tells me the whole lot of them are a bunch of sleazy, slimy politicians.
Well, she blew up the investigation. This is her most important decision that she had to make as Attorney General, the decision whether to prosecute Mrs. Clinton and, frankly, Bill Clinton and maybe others. And now that, as she's admitted, the whole thing has had a shadow cast over it. And I don't know how she fixes it. I don't know how it's fixed. The special counsel may be too late. Maybe the only fix is an indictment to reestablish trust from the American people in the system. But Ms. Lynch has a lot to answer for. That's why we, in the least, have asked for an Inspector General investigation.
Who is she going to answer to? Who is she going to answer? This woman should not only recuse herself, she should resign. Because what she has done to the American public's faith in the criminal justice system, she's totally destroyed it.
Well, you know, if Republicans in Congress feel that way, they can make that happen. And there's not a member of the administration who serves in office without the sufferance of Republicans in Congress. And if they didn't want that person in office in the cabinet, they'd make it clear things won't happen anymore until that person resigns. So if they feel strongly about it, they should take action.
What about, you know, the idea that she is still going to be there, you know, short term, and she controls whether or not that case goes in the grand jury?
Well, it's a terrible situation, as we said before, and I think she needs to make it clear that the decision is going to be made by non-political prosecutors, because we've heard that line before out of this Justice Department. Either that or recuse herself and just say, "Look, I'm not going to appoint a special counsel. I'm going to let someone else in the agency."
She was on the hot seat yesterday, and she namby-pambied through the whole thing and said, "I'm going to leave it up to career prosecutors, the FBI, the head of the FBI." And then she says, "I fully expect to accept their recommendations." That doesn't mean she's going to. That doesn't mean she recused herself. She can block the grand jury access.
Yeah, and to be clear, I would use the phrase careerist prosecutors in the Justice Department, because in D.C. especially, you have a lot of bureaucrats who are as political as the political appointees they report to. So we really have to put pressure on the system, the President, Congress, and the Justice Department indirectly, to do the right thing here and put the rule of law before politics.
You know the president's not going to do it, Tom. He's the one who said she never put the security of this country in jeopardy, and he's doubled down by endorsing her. But, Tom, we always love having you on the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Tom Fitton.
You're welcome, Jay.
All right, with me now, American Center for Law and Justice Chief Counsel Jay Sekulow. All right, Jay, thanks for being with us tonight. What do you make of this latest 3.5-hour voluntary interview with the FBI?
Yeah, voluntary interview, because if she didn't volunteer, they were going to subpoena her. Look, it's exactly what you said, Judge. This is the last person you interview. I've been involved in prosecutions. You have too. The last person you interview is who? The target. That's exactly what you said. That's what's the situation here. She's the target. So she's the last one interviewed. But the outrage of this to the American people should be the rule of law has been completely sabotaged here. And what about those FBI agents who have been working on this case for a year to find out that days before the target of the investigation is interviewed by the FBI, the Department of Justice, her husband gets on the airplane owned by the United States Department of Justice and has a private conversation with the chief law enforcement officer of the United States of America, the Attorney General. So I'm with you. We're past recusal. She needs to resign. She needs to go.
Let me ask you this, Tom. So Hillary Clinton goes in. I hear there are 8, I believe, from the FBI or the Justice Department, certainly the FBI. She's got 5 lawyers, what happens? Do they ask her questions? She said it was civil. I mean, really, what did she think? She was going to be waterboarded? I mean, come on. And then the other thing is, do they then present evidence that she may not know they had? What do you think happened in there?
Well, look, I think one of the things you've got to be crystal clear about is they gave immunity to the IT person who put this together.
Brian Pagliano.
That person got immunity. You don't get immunity unless you've made a proffer. The proffer means that you've established that there's something worthy that the United States Department of Justice wants, so much so that they were willing to say, we will not prosecute you for a crime so long as you're corroborating what you're saying is going to be the following. So they give them that proffer of testimony. I think you take that proffer and you present that evidence before who? Before the target, and ask for an explanation, or ask, what she knew or didn't know and when she knew it. But the problem with this is the entire process is now completely 100% tainted, irrecoverable, can't recover. And she doubled down on this, Judge. Loretta Lynch said she had the Department of Justice issued a corrective, pretty much a corrective, saying, to be clear, the Attorney General is the ultimate person that's going to make the decision here. So she's not recused herself. She hasn't removed herself. She, like you said, she hedged on I will rely on career prosecutors. But that evidence was put forward. There's no doubt about it when they're questioning the Secretary of State. I do ask this question, though, and you and I have both done these kind of cases. 3.5 hours for the target sounds like a long time, but for a year-long investigation, not that long. So, it
Jay,
could have been very targeted what they were looking for here.
Some people are saying, it was a long time. It's not a long time. First of all,
it's not.
Did they confront her with the 50 or the 30,000 emails that she erased and that she destroyed?
Yeah.
Did they get them back? Did they forensically get them back and then confront her with them, saying this has nothing to do with yoga, this has nothing to do with your wedding dress, this has to do with the money for the Clinton Foundation?
Well, look, all of that is a possible, in the sense that the FBI was able to obtain information. They did a thorough investigation here. I don't doubt for a moment that James Comey's agents are doing a thorough job.
Oh, yeah.
But let's go back to the 3.5 hours. You and I are both correct on this. That's not a long time.
I agree.
But if they were very targeted, Judge, if they knew exactly what they wanted to hear, in other words, they knew what they needed for their case, maybe they got it. I still say at the end of the day, because those emails went from Hillary Clinton on the private email server to the President of the United States, an indictment not likely, but this situation with the Attorney General casts such a shadow on it that if the FBI makes that recommendation in a criminal reference letter to the Department of Justice and they don't prosecute, I cannot even imagine what the fallout's going to be.
Well, you know what? Within 3 weeks of the Democratic convention, you know, this is nail-biting time. But you know how she is.
Yep.
Nothing moves her. She goes out there and,
Nope.
you know, waves, and we'll see what happens. Jay Sekulow, thanks so much for being with us this evening.
Thanks, Judge.
All right.
Appreciate it.
And my political panel is standing by with a very interesting take on today's news and Hillary's future. Plus...
This world is a crazy world we live in. I mean, you know,
so get a gun.
I got a hammer. I don't need a gun. I got a hammer right here. 21 ounce.
I get nostalgic around the 4th of July, so this year I'm looking back at some of my favorite moments from street justice. Get ready for a few laughs. Justice rolls on in a moment.